Reality is wholeness, isness. And unreality is notness, not wholeness. If we take a look at the word not, it's not, right? Non-existence, notness, nothingness. And so when we are tuned into the ego mind, that fragmented aspect, there's a sense of suffering because the ego mind's position is the position of notness, which is unreality. Therefore, it's in misalignment with reality, which is isness and wholeness. Basically, when notness is trying to be something, is trying to be a somebodiness, which is the ego, then it's a misalignment. It's incongruent because notness is notness, right? Unreality is unreality. It's kind of like when a ghost is trying to be alive, is trying to be fleshed out, it's trying to be in flesh. It's incongruent because it's a ghost. It's already, quote unquote, unalive, right? It's already in in non-fleshed outness. And so it's in misalignment. Or let's say red, the color red is trying to be blue. But that's the thing, it's not blue, it's red, right? And so, again, it's a misalignment. And so the ego mind is like notness trying to be in isness or redness trying to be blue. It causes suffering because it's not the match, it's this trying to be this, which is not the case. Therefore, it causes suffering. Now, when we come into emptiness, meaning the ego mind or the ego self sits back, strips down into nothingness or emptiness, then that's the time there's a sense of relaxation. That's the time there's a sense of, like a kind of correctness, quote unquote. Because finally, notness has come into notness, which is the case, right? Which is actually the case. It's like red finally coming into redness, which is the case, which has always been the case anyway. It's the cessation of trying to be not it. Redness trying to be blue. Notness trying to be isness. The non-fleshed outness trying to be fleshed out. This distance, right? This mismatch, misalignment, again, is what causes suffering. But we experience notness, right? Or this ghostly self, the ego mind, right? The fragmented aspect, because we're in the realm of existence. Non-existence does not exist. And so the idea of notness can be experienced in isness because isness is existence, right? But that's the thing. The experience of notness is not good experience because it's in conflict with reality, which is isness, presence, existence. And so again, finally, when the non-fleshed out, right, the agent of notness has finally come into nothingness, realized its ghostliness, it's a ghost, it's not the authority, it's not the one at the throne in reality, right, in this fleshed out realm, then that's the time we quote unquote come home to wholeness, which you can say is represented by the whole body, yeah, the whole avatar, the whole system, instead of being disembodied in the mind, being fragmented, right? And then that fragment is lording over the whole system as if it's the authority, when in fact it's the ghost. When in fact it's actually the complete opposite, because it's coming from a place of, again, notness, which is not reality. And so when that agent of notness, that which is separated, right, from isness and wholeness, is the one in authority, well, then we have the world that we have today, which is insane. It's a mad world, because the one in authority is that which is not in touch, grounded in reality, you know. Now I'm reminded of the phrase, it takes a village. It points to the whole system instead of the, let's say, the fragment or a separate entity. It points to the whole, the whole village, right? And you can say that the village is our home. It's what we come home to. It's where we feel a sense of belongingness, restedness, right? A sense of supportedness, a sense of groundedness. And so you can think of it that way. The whole system, right? The whole body is like the village. It's like the whole system. And so when you, let's say, go about your day, you take the whole village with you. You come from that place. You carry the all, the whole with you, instead of abandoning it. So that's the thing. The fragment or the ego is the one that abandons the whole, right? It's not the other way around. It thinks that it's the one abandoned. It's the one casted out. It's the one left to its devices. That's the experience when we are only tuned into that. When we are disembodied from the whole system, that will be the experience. It's the, you can say, signal that you are tuned into the fragment instead of the whole, right? There's that sense of separatedness, unbelongingness, abandonedness, unsupportedness, right? But it's because the fragment has, quote unquote, removed itself from the tribe, from the village, from the whole system. You know how in ancient times, when humans are still cavemen, when we are still tribalistic, being separated from the tribe is a death sentence. You cannot survive out there on your own. Your bloodstream, right? Your life is really dependent on the village, on the tribe. You get separated from that, that's it, dead. Now, in the modern times, that ancient tribalistic environment is no longer the case in most part of the world. We're not living in the wild anymore. We're not going to get attacked by a wild animal anymore, right? And so now the focus, you can say, is the shifting from the external to the internal. It's directing that, you could say, dependence from out there to here, right? To your own guiding system, right? To your own tribe, quote unquote, to your own village, again, which is the whole body. the whole avatar. It's the quote unquote coming home of the fragment, the mind, the ego mind to the whole. It's like a slice of pie coming home to the whole pie. That's why in a lot of spiritual teachings, it's described as a kind of returning. It's not really going out there into some faraway place, but it's a kind of integration, a kind of returning back here. And again, there's the saying to go with, right? Go with the flow, cooperate, finally getting on board, you know, and cease the rebellion, cease the abandonment, and turning back and finally going along with the true intelligence, you could say, going with the tribe, going with the collective. But it's the collective that is this, not the external collective, right? We're done with that. We're kind of done with that mode or focus during the ancient times where we have to really cooperate with the tribe because it's a life or death situation. But now the realization or the lesson is to recognize that idea or sense of collective or whole or village from out there to here, right? It's the shifting from an quote unquote external guru giving that following, that discipleship to an external element, reclaiming that and returning that here to, let's say, your own guru, right? Your own authentic guiding system. It's that shifting from external to here, right? To your own system, to your own wholeness. So whatever it is that we're putting out there, my sense of worth is in out there's hands. Is in the hands of other people. Is in the hands of society. Right? My wholeness and completeness is out there. And I have to go get it. And I have to go whatever. I have to go achieve it, possess it. It's you could say, cessation of that, because all that chasing and trying to possess is coming from that separated fragment who's turned itself away from the wholeness, which contains what it's looking for anyway. It's like all these goodness, all these quote unquote resources are in the quote unquote are in the village, right? It's contained in wholeness and isness. It's kind of like blueness is contained in blue. The yesness of something is contained in yesness. And so, again, going back to the ancient tribal times, the resources, right? The goodness, the yesness, right? The yesness of support, of safety, of security, of necessities like food, water, etc., are contained in the whole, are contained in the tribe. It's the one that contains the goodness, the resources. That's why when you separate from the tribe, you're gonna abandon or turn away from goodness, right? From the true nature qualities. Therefore, I have to go get that. I have to go get there. You'll be in a place of seeking for it instead of enjoying it, instead of being in touch with it. The tribe is your blood. It's the bloodstream. And so if we recognize this, if we recognize that goodness is contained in the whole, then you could say we wouldn't want to abandon it. The motivational mechanism of everything, of all of existence, is towards goodness. It's towards that which we believe or think is the good. Plants and animals, the directionality is towards goodness, right? If there's a place that's full of food and water and shelter, the animal will go there. The plant will gear towards the sun, right? It's where goodness lies. That's a given, that's a given. Like if someone offered us trash, or let's say food, right? Edible food, common sense, right? We'll choose the food instead of the trash. It's given. Now the ego mind, it's coming from a place of distortedness, right? It's insane. Its idea of goodness or benefit is always at the expense, is always at the expense of others. There can only be goodness or benefit here if there is this benefit over there. You see, it has to be black and white, it has to be unequal. That's their idea of goodness or benefit. In order for it to be here, it must not be over there. Right? So for the fragment, it thinks that what is beneficial is to harm others, right? Is to dominate, is to be controlling, is to destroy others. That's its belief, that is its mode, that is its modus operandi, you could say. And so we can notice this in really unconscious or really egotistic individuals. That's how they operate, right? That's their way of being: harming, exploitation, abuse, deception, etc. That's their benefit. That's their motivational mechanism. This is what benefits me. Doing this, it's the one that is beneficial because it's a fragment. Fragment is the fragment, right? It's the feeding. It's the feeding of the fragment. It's kind of like fragmenting other people feeds the fragment, right? Red is the red. What feeds red is, of course, red. That's their drug. That's their feeding. They are enlivened, you can say, enlivened by causing chaos or conflict, or asserting one's position in order to squash or argue with another person. There's this one time where I was in a kind of conversation, and this one person started proselytizing. And you can say he's preaching about Christianity and Jesus. And that he's really not coming from a place of grounded experience, but it's all in the mind, right? He read something and is now preaching about it to everyone. Now, there's this other person who chimed in and said, I'm spiritual. I do meditations. And she mentioned that prayer is more of talking to God, and meditation is more of listening to God, which is a nice point. And so that's how the point of view of these two people. And while I was there, there's also that urge, to chime in. If I tune into the ego self, it wants to also chime in. It wants also to assert itself. It wants also to give its viewpoint or stance, or try to assert itself. But when I tune into the whole system, it didn't feel like doing that. there was no need. There was no need. Especially that there's really no openness happening. The preacher, the person that's proselytizing about religion and Christianities, it's not an open discussion. It's basically just people asserting their positions, you could say. That's why when I tune into the whole, it doesn't have anything to say. Again, compared to when I tune into the fragment, the ego self, then there's the urge, right? There's the wanting to join in the self-assertion. So you can try this for yourself when you can feel the rising, the rising of the ego self. Before, before being reactive and following it and giving voice to it, being the voice to it, take a step back and you could say, get the second opinion of the whole system and see what it wants to do. If it wants to do that, if it wants to join in the argument, let's say, right? There's this other instance wherein I was outside and there's a sense of discomfort. There's a sense of, when you're outside and you're not as relaxed, let's say, compared to when you're in a familiar, comfortable place, compared to when you're at home, right? And while I was there, it occurred to me that I don't have to abandon home, you know, even though I'm quote unquote I'm outside, it doesn't mean I have to abandon home. I can take it with me. I take it with me. It's like the whole village is here. I don't have to actually separate myself just because I'm quote unquote I'm outside. I can bring it with me or carry it with me. And so it's like the whole system, the whole village is here with you, right? Is taken along or you go along with it. Essentially, it's not separating. It's not separating from it. It's not separating from goodness and wholeness. Hence the availability or accessibility still of that comfort or stability or sense of security. This also reminds me of the phrase strength in numbers. Practically speaking, when there's a group of people mobilized to complete a certain task, then it gets completed more efficiently as opposed to when only one person is doing all the work. You know how those kinds of dynamics at work or at home or, school projects, and only one person is doing everything. They're picking up the slack of everyone else. And so the whole is not mobilized, all the burden or load is dumped onto one person instead of distributed amongst everyone. And so we can notice that if we are tuned into the ego, right, at the neglect, at the abandonment of everything else, of the whole system, then there's the experience of burdened. It's as if the whole world is on our shoulders, or it's as if life is so heavy, or it's as if we have to strive and struggle and everything is so exhausting. And that's the case because it's like this one fragment doing all the work when there is this whole system that can be mobilized, you can say. It's a whole intelligent system that's meant to work that's meant to be engaged, you know, instead of compartmentalized in the fragmented mind, right? It's using the faculties of the whole of the village, you can say, instead of the fragment, right? Instead of that separated aspect, it's using the faculties, or let's say the interface of the whole pie instead of the slice of pie. Imagine a person running towards the crowd, right? Now, if he runs towards the crowd and gets blended in the crowd, then you can no longer find him. He's insulated. There's that sense of insulatedness. And so it's almost like he dissolved in the crowd. And the crowd is now the one interacting with you, right? You can say that's the sense of it. When that self, that ego self, allows, instead of assertion, instead of erected assertion, softens and comes down into the whole system, allowing quote unquote the village, the collective, to be the one in interfacing. Then you'll notice a different capacity, a different way of relating. Whereas before, you could say that receiving compliments or criticism, it makes you feel uncomfortable. Not just criticism, but compliments, right? Sometimes it makes us go into resistance because there's a sense of, oh, yeah, I'm not that. Oh, no, please. Right? The ego self is in resistance. But when you're in the crowd, when you're using the faculties or you're interfacing through the whole system, you'll notice that it has no problem. It has no resistance. It has no problem owning it, but not like egoically owning it or something or making it an identity. But it's just there's not that knee-jerk reactivity of trying to push it back or trying to resist. The whole can quote unquote take it. The whole can own it. The capacity is in the whole, right? Instead of the fragment. Another analogy would be like when we were young and we need a kind of moral support, right? Like we need a companion just to go to this place or just to do something. We are strengthened or enabled by the group, right? By our friends, you can say, and we are able to do something because of that, right? We find the strength in the group. The resources, you could say, are in the group. And so again, it's about redirecting, redirecting this following, this surrenderment, this giving way to this sort of dependence from out there to here, to the body, you could say, to the whole intelligence, which is the whole avatar. So when the mind is looking for you can say, role model or a guru again, and it's looking for some external authority, it's just about reining that back, redirecting that from out there to over here, to your own village, you can say, to your own collective, right? When the ego mind is looking for home, for belongingness, for a sense of support out there, right? And dumping dumping that responsibility onto other people, it only ever feeds the fragment. It only ever, quote unquote, strengthens or reinforces the disempowered fragment who is turned away from the whole, who is turned away from its own village, from its own resource, right? From the already available yesness. So it's about, again, reining that back and redirecting it to your own home, the true beloved, right? The true authority, your own tribe, so to speak. So that there's the cessation, of dumping responsibility onto one another, right? You're the one who holds my sense of worth. You're the one who will complete me. You're the one who's responsible for my happiness and well-being. It's you. You're the one. That's the insanity of the ego mind. It's always directed towards the external, as if it's owed the world, as if it has the right to control everyone else, to control the world in order to please and appease it. The perspective is skewed. It's kind of like the fragment. It thinks that the world should revolve around itself instead of it returning to its proper place in the whole. It's so psychopathic and deluded and thinks that the world and other people should rearrange themselves around it. And everyone should live their lives according to its pleasure, according to its demands and entitlement. To summarize, basically, it's charging or empowering the whole instead of feeding the fragment, instead of charging or looking through the eyes of the fragment, right? It's shifting that and putting that, quote unquote, that currency or charging to the whole instead, right? Mobilizing the whole instead. Remember that the benefit or the goodness lies in the whole. If there's this realization or understanding, then we gravitate towards it. You can say we shift to this investment. We retract or withdraw our investment from the imposter, right? From the agent of notness that makes you think, that deceives you to think that the benefit is in its hands. But if we understand that that is not the case, then we withdraw our currency and invest it in the whole instead.